1945 Tokyo. A Japanese officer clutches Indonesia's forbidden independence proclamation. His superior bursts in. Boots clicking sharply on the wooden floor, the officer quickly tucks the manuscript into a hidden pocket. His face a mask of urgency. It must not be broadcast. He whispers, "Not yet." The superior's eyes narrow, sensing the weight of the secret. Hours later, in a Jakarta street bathed in the glow of flickering streetlights, a young man rushes through the crowd, clutching a radio. His voice crackles through the airwaves. But the signal is weak, interrupted by static. The words he recites are halting, uncertain. "We are independent," he stutters, but the message never reaches its intended audience. Meanwhile, in a high-security prison cell in Jakarta, Sukarno sits on a thin mattress. His hands bound, the walls are cold and damp. A guard enters, his voice cold. "The Japanese have detained you." He says, "The proclamation will not be read today." Sukarno's eyes darken with realization. The power vacuum is about to swallow the archipelago whole. Outside the prison, the streets of Jakarta are alive with whispers. A group of young students gathers, their faces alight with hope. One of them clutches a torn newspaper headline. "Japan surrenders," but no one mentions independence. The air hangs heavy with unspoken questions. What happens next? Will the Dutch return? Will the islands ever unite? In The Hague, Dutch officials gather in a grand hall. Their maps spread across the table. A general stands, his voice steady. "The Japanese have surrendered." He says, "But Indonesia? It never existed." The room erupts into murmurs of relief. The colonial administration will resume control. No power vacuum, no resistance. The Dutch are ready to reclaim what they once owned. But in the archipelago, the people are not waiting. In a small village on Sumatra, elders gather around a fire, their voices weaving together in a language no outsider could understand. They speak of unity, of shared history, of a bond that stretches across 17,000 islands. This is the ritual of unity, a cultural and linguistic glue that has held the archipelago together for centuries. Yet, without the proclamation, it will never be formalized. Allied forces arrive in Indonesia, their ships cutting through the calm waters of Jakarta Bay. But when they disembark, they find no welcoming committee, no flags, no banners, no signs of a sovereign government. Instead, they encounter a colonial administration that has already begun to reassert control. The power vacuum is real, but it is not what they expected. In the streets of Yogyakarta, a young woman watches as Dutch soldiers march past, their boots echoing on the cobblestones. She clutches a small Indonesian flag, its colors faded but still vibrant. Her eyes fill with tears as she realizes the proclamation never reached the people. The dream of independence is not dead. It is just waiting, hidden beneath the weight of occupation. Back in Tokyo, the officer who confiscated the proclamation sits in his office, staring at the document. He knows what he has done. The words on the page could have changed history. But now, it is too late. The power vacuum is frozen in time, and the archipelago is left to navigate the chaos alone. The officer's hands shake as he folds the manuscript carefully and tucks it away forever. Across the archipelago, the people are left in limbo. In Sumatra, oil fields hum with activity, but the profits flow to Dutch hands. In Kalimantan, forests are logged without consent. In Papua, copper mines dig deep, but the wealth stays abroad. The Dutch have returned, but this time, they are not just colonizers. They are occupiers, and the archipelago is powerless to stop them. In a quiet corner of Jakarta, a group of intellectuals huddles together, their voices hushed. They whisper of the ritual of unity, the cultural and linguistic bonds that could have united the islands. But without the proclamation, without a government, without a flag, their words are just echoes in the wind. The dream of independence is still alive, but it is fading fast. The silence of August 17th is deafening. No proclamation, no government, no unity. The archipelago is left to the mercy of occupiers, to the whims of history. The ritual of unity remains unspoken, its power untapped. The people are left to wonder, what if? What if the proclamation had been read? What if the dream had been realized? The answer lies in the silence, in the echoes of a nation that never quite found its voice. No proclamation, no resistance, just Dutch tanks rolling back. The police actions never end. They become permanent occupation. No sovereign government exists to negotiate. The Hague resumes control instantly. Diplomacy dies before it begins. The colonial administration simply restarts. Fragmented sultans raise separate banners. No unified command. No shared strategy. Each kingdom fights its own isolated war. Divide et impera works perfectly. Spears against repeating rifles. Carries against machine guns. Brave charges met with industrial slaughter. Local resistance evaporates in months. Superior firepower decides everything. Sumatra's black gold pumps ceaselessly. Tankers line the Malacca Strait. Every barrel fuels Dutch reconstruction. Not a drop stays for the islands. Ancient Bornean forests fall. Ironwood and Marantai shipped whole. The Hague builds mansions. Kalimantan loses its lungs. Timber barons grow fat. Papua's mountains hollowed out. Copper and gold flow through pipes to coast. The Hague profits. Tribes watch sacred lands poisoned. No consent asked. By the way, if you like this discussion, don't forget to subscribe. There are many more interesting topics coming up. Light bulb. The Japanese Ramusha system never leaves. Dutch adopt it eagerly. Forced labor becomes law. Millions conscripted. Roads, railways, plantations built on bones. Young men vanish into camps. Future teachers, doctors, leaders die of malaria and starvation. A generation's potential buried in unmarked graves. The nation's brain drained. Schools closed for natives. Literacy deemed dangerous. Only vocational training for plantation work allowed. Minds kept dark. Obedience engineered systematically. Gamelan silenced. Batik patterns restricted. Languages banned in administration. Identity eroded by decree. The soul of the archipelago targeted for extinction. Amsterdam canals gleam with new gold. The Hague builds grand ministries. Wealth extracted from 17,000 islands builds European splendor. The colony pays for empire. No newspapers report the suffering. No diplomats protest. The world looks away. The long recolonization settles like dust. Permanent scar on the map. A sun-drenched stage in Bandung, Indonesia. The year is 1955. Delegates from 29 nations gather for the historic Bandung Conference. But today, the stage is empty. No Indonesian flag flies over the podium. The non-aligned movement is stillborn. The world's nations split into two camps. The Cold War hardens. No neutral ground exists in the archipelago. Vietnam's war spreads unchecked. The domino theory falls like a storm. No Indonesian buffer stops the tide. The archipelago becomes a battlefield. Malaya's emergency never ends. Singapore remains a British naval base. The Straits of Malacca choke the world's trade. A new kind of blockade. Sito becomes a permanent garrison. The world's fleets control the crossroads. The archipelago's voice is silenced. The world forgets its name. The domino theory wasn't just a theory. It was a prophecy. Without Indonesia, the Cold War becomes a global chessboard with no centerpiece. The Straits of Malacca become a choke point for global trade, controlled by foreign powers. The absence of Indonesia reshapes the entire geopolitical landscape. The domino theory's fall echoes through history, altering everything. Without Indonesia, the Cold War's balance tilts forever. The year is 2025. A satellite orbits over the Indonesian archipelago. Its camera capturing not a unified nation but a patchwork of corporate flags fluttering over fractured land. The map below it is no longer a single country, but a quilt of territories stitched together by foreign interests. Each region bears a name that feels borrowed, not born, like a ghost of what once was. Zoom into Sumatra's petroleum zone, where oil rigs loom like skeletal giants over the once lush rainforest. The ground trembles not from earthquakes, but from the relentless extraction of black gold. Workers in uniformed silhouettes move like ants beneath the glow of corporate logos, their faces obscured by masks. The air reeks of sulfur and unchecked greed. The Java industrial corridor stretches from Bandung to Jakarta, a sprawling metropolis where skyscrapers dwarf the once vibrant streets. Factories belch smoke into the sky, their chimneys never silenced. The streets below are choked with smog, and the once melodic sounds of gamelan have been drowned out by the clatter of assembly lines. This is not a city. It is a machine. In Papua, the mining territory is a landscape of scars. Mountains once covered in emerald vegetation now bear the wounds of open-pit mines, their walls glistening with copper and gold. Indigenous communities, their traditional land seized, live in shanty towns on the periphery, their voices silenced by corporate security. The rivers, once clear, now run thick with toxic sludge. The Straits of Malacca, once guarded by Indonesia's proud navy, now serve as a choke point for foreign fleets. Warships from half a dozen nations patrol these waters, their flags fluttering in the salty breeze. No Indonesian flag is visible. The once vibrant maritime trade hub has been reduced to a neutral zone, a strategic highway controlled by others. The world's goods flow through here, but the people who once shaped this crossroads are forgotten. Climate catastrophe has turned Indonesia's once lush landscapes into a tinderbox. Peatlands, drained for palm oil plantations, smolder under the scorching sun. Mangroves, vital barriers against storms, have been bulldozed for shrimp farms. The air is thick with smoke, and the once bountiful forests now cough up ash like a dying beast. There is no central authority to halt this destruction, only corporate interests that see profit in ruin. A lone figure stands on a crumbling bridge overlooking Jakarta Bay. They clutch a faded map, its borders once bold and clear, now smudged with ink. The map represents a nation that no longer exists. The figure looks out at the skyline, where corporate towers loom like fortresses. They whisper to themselves, their voice barely audible above the wind. Sovereignty was never a gift of history. It was a daily miracle, forged by unity. The corporate logos on the skyline of Jakarta glow under the artificial lights of the night. Each one represents a different nation, a different interest, a different agenda. The city that once dreamed of unity now thrives on division. The streets below are a mosaic of languages, none of which is Indonesian. The people here are not a nation. They are a collection of workers, consumers, and temporary residents in a corporate playground. A child in a tattered school uniform stares out from a window overlooking the Java industrial corridor. Their small hands clutch a toy boat, a symbol of a lost maritime heritage. The child's eyes are filled with questions that go unanswered. Outside, the factory smokestacks belch black clouds into the sky. The child's teacher, a shadowy figure in the background, does not speak of the past. The future, they seem to say, belongs to those who control the machines. The map of Indonesia, now a patchwork of corporate territories, is displayed on a wall in a high-rise office in Amsterdam. A corporate executive leans over it, tracing the borders with a pen. Their smile is cold, calculated. Efficiency, they murmur, is the new sovereignty. The map beneath their fingers is not a nation. It is a board game, and they are the only ones who understand the rules. The people of Indonesia are merely pieces on the chessboard of global capital. The once mighty Indonesian Navy, now a shadow of its former self, is reduced to a handful of rusted patrol boats. They drift aimlessly in the Straits of Malacca, their crews too few and too poorly equipped to challenge the foreign fleets. The sailors, their uniforms faded and patched, look out at the horizon, where the warships of other nations dominate the waters. They know their mission is not to defend. It is to observe, to remember, and to wait for a miracle that may never come. The final shot lingers on a single Indonesian flag, now a relic, fluttering weakly in a gust of wind. It sways above a corporate plaza. Its colors faded and barely visible. The plaza is filled with people from all over the world, their faces blurred in the crowd. None of them notice the flag. None of them care. The world has moved on without Indonesia. And the flag, once a symbol of hope, now hangs like a ghost in the wind. A silent reminder of what could have been and what was lost. Hi everyone. Quick reminder. Subscribe for high-quality daily content. Sparkles Part 2 is dropping tomorrow. Subscribe for notifications. Loudspeaker.